If you're gonna hold yourself to the highest standard, don't half-ass it. Do it the whole way through. And this is what I mean. If you're gonna hold yourself to the high standard of like a David Goggins in terms of your physical performance and your output, also hold yourself to that level of self-compassion, self-forgiveness, and self-love. And so the way I shared it with him was, if you're gonna be Goggins on one side, be the Dalai Lama, Jesus, Buddha on the other side.
Welcome to the Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. And now your host, George Roberts.
Welcome back, entrepreneurs. Today we welcome Jamil, Sayegh, a life, business, and relationships coach. Welcome to the show, Jamil.
Thank you so much, George. Great to be with you and all your listeners.
All right. And I want to share with everybody how we launched into this today. I was feeling a little bit maybe light on the energy level, and you had an awesome exercise to get started. So I want to say, if you had the opportunity to spend some time with Dr. Sayegh, definitely very, very highly recommended. So really enjoyed that and feeling in a much higher energy state now.
Wonderful. Quick results. Yeah.
That's right. Why should we have to wait too long? So maybe you can get us started by telling us about your journey that got you into life, business, and relationship coaching.
Yeah, George, it'd be my pleasure. And so I just want to say thank you, everyone who's here, for taking the time to listen. I know how valuable time is, and it'll make sense in a second when I share kind of what got me into this. And I don't take that lightly. So my goal is to make this as valuable as possible for everyone who's listening. And hopefully, I trust we'll have a great back and forth. And so kind of for me, the relevant part of this story starts when I was 19 years old. I was an undergraduate sophomore, and my father had a brain aneurysm, and he was 49 years old. And for anyone who's not familiar, think of a brain aneurysm like you have a blood vessel in the brain, like one of the tubes starts to balloon out. And if you're fortunate, you have a really bad headache, you go to the hospital, they take care of it, and hopefully you're okay. My dad wasn't as fortunate, and his ruptured. He was in a 4-hour brain surgery, and we were told he came as close to dying as you can get, less than 5% chance survival. And in those 4 hours, you can imagine it felt like, 40 years waiting for that time to pass. And the surgeon came out, he said it was the worst aneurysm he'd ever seen. He said, he's alive, which is already a miracle. He's in a coma. I don't know if he'll ever wake up, and he might die at any moment because he's in this really hypercritical space. And I walked into the room after the surgery, and I saw my dad. And in that moment, I've never seen somebody, that vulnerable. And, my father was a family practice physician. He was also a musician. He was one of the top Elvis impersonators in the world. Music was his passion, and he's toured with Elvis's band. Like, he was the real deal. And, he was such the epitome of what it meant to be a man for me, as well as so full of life. And there I was seeing him in this completely, helpless state. And in that moment, I had felt this profound sense of regret. And that regret came from this knowing that I had taken my relationship with my dad for granted, that I bought into the lie that, I have time. This perspective that, oh, he's 49, I have 30, 40, 50 more years. I don't have to prioritize the relationship now. Not thinking that that last day could have been, the last day. And it was a really horrible, way of being in that moment. And fast forward 3 years, he survived 3 years, which was a blessing in so many ways before he did pass away. And in those 3 years, I got, my prayers answered. I took several years off after college to be one of his primary caregivers. I spent 10 to 15 hours a day with him. And I really learned the magic and the miracle that is this moment, that is today, the gift of life that we all get, that everyone listening woke up today. And 150,000 people on average per year don't wake up today. And you weren't one of them. Every day, 150,000 people don't wake up. I think I misspoke that before. But if you woke up today, it's already a miracle. If you've got people that you love and care about, they woke up today, wow, like you really hit the jackpot. And yet so often we take that for granted. We take it as a given. We make an assumption that, of course, I'm going to wake up. Of course, my family's going to wake up. Of course, all these things are going to happen. And that leads us to a way of living that I think can create a lot of regret because we're not very intentional about it. And I remember being at my dad's wake, and over 7,000 people came. And I shook every single person's hand in 5 hours. And almost everyone said, your dad saved my life. And I felt so humbled by the impact that this man had. There's people from every kind of culture, color, creed, religion, like dress, like everything. And what they all had in common is they had so much love and respect for this man who cared about them so deeply. And I was so humbled by the impact that he had, but I also had a realization that I'd been playing small, that I cared way too much about what other people thought about me, that I was afraid of rejection. And because of that, I was what I call robbing the world of my light. And one of my favorite words is enthusiasm. And enthusiasm comes from ante theos, or en theos, which means the God within. And so when you radiate enthusiastically, you're radiating that divinity, that divine spark, that light that you are. And that is what makes you uniquely you. And yet I was hiding that out of fear. I was playing small. And I find so many of us do that. We wear a mask. And the mask is, who do I need to be enough, to be loved, to be special, to be normal, to be validated, to be popular, to be whatever it is we think we need to be. But what we're not doing is we're not being us. And I find that when you wear the mask, even when you win that game, you lose, because you think they love you for you, but they love the mask. They don't even know you. And I realized that I didn't want to keep living this way. And to further kind of cement that into me, 2 of my cousins passed away in those 3 years I was taking care of my dad. One was 20 and one was 21. Both were sudden. And if you asked either man when they were, let's say, 18, tell me about what you dream for your life, I promise you neither one would say, I'd be dead in 2 to 3 years. And I don't share that by any means to be, morbid. I share that from like a practical realism perspective of, you might live 100 years. I hope you do, or more. There was a guy in Arizona when I went to med school there who was 114 and he was the oldest guy in the US. So I'm like, that's awesome. That happens for some people. But what would happen if you recognize that I don't know how many days I have left? Where am I living from fear? Where am I playing small? Where am I robbing the world and the future and my family of the impact I could be having? And in that moment, it was like a never again situation for me. It was like, I'm changing, it's done. And, I stayed at home for about 6 to 12 months to be with my family, went to medical school in Arizona, spent 5 years there, and I kept, coaching throughout. And then ever since, I practiced medicine for a little while, and then I went full on into my coaching. And right now for me, it's truly been a privilege and a blessing to work with leaders, champions, and high performers from all walks of life, many of them in the real estate space, whether they be investors, brokers, agents, loan officers, you name it. And the way I like to think about it is, what do I actually help them do? And it relates back to my story with my dad. It's creating an extraordinary life without regret. An extraordinary life being a life on your terms, living your life, not somebody else's version of your life. And without regret. I don't want anyone to feel what I felt in that hospital room with my dad, knowing that that could have been the last moment, and the way I kind of had left things in our relationship, that wouldn't have been okay with me, and that would have eaten away at me over time. And so many of us, you're alive right now, you can do something about it, but we wait and we put it off and we say, I have time. So what happens if I told you tonight, when your head hits the pillow, you're not going to wake up tomorrow? Could you be at peace with that?
Yeah, and I love that, because I was going to ask you later in the interview if you are a Stoic or if you've gotten strength from the Stoic. Sounds like a very Stoic exercise. I don't know if you're familiar which exercise I'm referring to.
I'm not familiar with, maybe I am, I'm not, because we didn't get into it, but I'm familiar with Stoicism. I am not very read into it, but a lot of the philosophies I have and spiritual kind of philosophies I have are in alignment with that. And so it definitely comes together. And so ultimately, I appreciate you bringing it up. And ultimately, I love the idea of, I was just talking to a client of mine right before this, and he's like, what do you tell people when they ask you, what do you do? And I have a bunch of answers I play with, but one of them that really is fun, I'm a time traveler. And they say, what do you mean? It's like, well, you step into my time machine, we go out into the future, and you share with me what that picture perfect life would look like. The happiness, the peace, the fulfillment, the career, the financial success, relationship, health, whatever it is. And when you're really clear on what that looks like, we come back to this moment and I help you make that real faster than you thought possible. And so that's been kind of the journey that's led me from when I was, 19 until today. And, that experience with my father is kind of the foundation of it. And there's just been so much life experience, training, coaching, mentorship, things that I have sought out to do what I can to be able to help any living being that comes into my presence. And that's been my goal and my ambition. And I'll leave it at that for now.
So great. I love the idea of living life with no regrets. And let me just flesh out the analogy here. So from Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man of his time, could have had anything he wanted. All he really wanted to be was a philosopher. And this being the Roman emperor, essentially the emperor of the known world, was not so much to his liking. And this was an exercise that he performed every day. When he woke up, he'd say, pretend that your life is done and the story is written, and now go and live the rest of your life properly. Consider it just literally a gift. Yeah.
Are you ready to build passive income through investing in multifamily real estate? Take the next step by heading to www.horizonmultifamily.com and click Get Started to schedule a call.
Yeah. And think about this idea. I don't know if this was it's a Buddhist philosophy, but it applies, like you just said, in Marcus Aurelius's quote as well. But that whole idea of the problem is you think you have time. And because of that, you come from this place of procrastination. I'll do it later. But what if you thought that, oh no, my life was done. And every day that I wake up, it's like an extra bonus day gifted to me. And I might not get another one. And there was this idea shared with me years ago that there's certain types of Buddhist monks that live in like monasteries. And what they do is they have a skull right next to their bed. And what that does when they wake up and they see that skull, it's a reminder of their own mortality. It's the reminder of eventually that'll happen to this body. But it's not today. And so it's like, let's live our life to the fullest today. Let's love fully, let's live fully, let's laugh fully, let's enjoy the experience and live a meaningful life for us.
Exactly. Or in the Latin terms, that's the Stoic Momento Mori.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Remember that you too shall die. We had this. And I'd like to get back to that idea of time being very important, being present, and how that really hits you like a ton of bricks. And let's bring something else into the picture here. I know one of the things that you like to tell people is essentially, if you're waiting to be happy, like if I accomplish this, then I'll be happy, right? So tell us, why is that a fiction?
Yeah. So I have a distinction that I share with clients that I'll share with you guys now. And it's this idea that you can do something to get happy, or you can do something happily. When you do something to get happy, you're coming from the perspective of, I'm not there yet, I'm not there yet, I'm not there yet. And when you're coming from I like the metaphor of like the alphabet. And so you start from A, you go to Z. A is where you begin, that's your journey. Z is what you see as the end. If you define success as Z, then A to Y will probably suck for you.
Yeah.
Because the whole time, am I at Z? No. Am I at Z? No. And that keeps coming up. And I had someone message me last night. Oh yeah, like this big thing happened in my life. And I said, oh, what does that mean to you? And the person's response to me was, I'm one step closer to success. And I said, can I share something with you? And it was basically a version of what I just said, that you're free to believe that. There's no judgment. You want that, fine. But notice that, what if you could be successful already? And so in the other one, I'm doing it happily, right? So I know what I want. I'm at A, I want to get to Z. But when I'm at C or I'm at D, I'm not at A anymore. So I'm going to celebrate my progress along the way. I'm going to celebrate who I'm becoming, who I'm stepping into. And that version of life I have found to be so much more fulfilling. Because what if you never make it to Z?
Right.
Is the whole thing a waste? What if you you got to Q, and then you found out you were dying or something? Your whole life could still be really meaningful. You could still enjoy the process. I often tell people a goal is a place to come from. It's not a place to get to. Meaning, and this is kind of going with your Marcus Aurelius quote, get really clear. What kind of person do I want to be? What kind of mom or dad? What kind of spouse? What kind of leader? In any role that you play, what kind of me would I love to be? And then you start acting like that version of you now. And by you being let's say a miniature version of that more successful version of you, then you start acting a certain way, and those actions lead to certain results. But all action stems from who you're being, how you choose to show up in the world. And so going back to time, if you're coming from that space of I'll be happy when, this is the really quick and simple process to prove to you that never works. There are millionaires and billionaires on the planet who have every single thing that you believe you need to be happy, and they're not. And yet there are people who have practically nothing and they are happy. And then there's millionaires and billionaires who are really happy. And then there's people who have practically nothing that are miserable. So what does that tell you? it's got nothing to do with the stuff. It's got nothing to do with what you have. I mean, to a certain degree, yeah, there's a practical sense of it. You know, there's a psychology kind of study showing that I think it's about $70,000 or $75,000. Once you go past that, you're not really any happier. But even like without that, like take it from the perspective that there's people who make less than $2 a day and they're extremely happy and fulfilled and every day is a miracle. And there's people who are billionaires and they commit suicide because it's like, what's the point, right? And so it's not the stuff. Can you fall in love with your process? Can you fall in love with your journey? Can you love who you become along the way so that, yeah, wherever I'm at right now along my journey is perfect. I'm already successful as I am. I'm not going to be more successful when I have $10 million more. I'm just going to be different. I've got $10 million more. I'm not a better person. I'm just a different version of me. But what's the mental state of that person? You could be that version of you now. And so for me, I always encourage people to get clear. What would that version of me in the future be like? Treat people, treat themselves, talk to people, talk to themselves. How would they act? Act that way now. It's not fake it till you make it. I'm not a fan of that. I look at is be it until you see it. And be it now. It's full authenticity. Be it now. It not being the I'm faking it as if I've got $10 million or $100 million. It's being who's the man or woman that was capable of creating that? What was the level of discipline? What was the level of commitment? How did they talk to themselves? Like, what was the level of self-compassion and self-forgiveness when they didn't accomplish something, right? All that kind of stuff, those qualities, those emotional states, those ways of being, you can step into right now. There's nothing holding you back from that except for the belief that you don't see yourself that way. And so I can keep going, but I'll pause there.
Yeah, great. I love a lot of the things I'm hearing there. I got my own exercise for seeing that wealth doesn't make happiness. I like to walk around my house and think about how happy I was when I got this or that possession. And I make a point of saying, and every time I do it, I know when I get something new, it's going to make me happy for a short period of time. And I make a point of actually recording in my mind, yeah, for 2 weeks, that chandelier made me really happy every time I walked under it. And now it's nice, but it doesn't really impact my life. I've got a small statue that I've got in the ensuite, and it's beautiful. But again, it was only about a couple of weeks that I really thought, like, yes, that's it. This is it.
Yeah, and to your point, George, when we come from that space of, I use the new car metaphor. It's like you got the new car, you've been saving up, you've been excited about it for years. It's a dream car. You have it. It's in the driveway. You're stoked. You're so excited about it. And just like with the chandelier, at some point, it's just a car. Yeah. At some point, it might even become more of a headache to have, like, depending on, what kind of car it is, and you can't park it anywhere, or like whatever the case may be. And so it's like catching yourself thinking, where am I, what's the word I'm looking for? Where am I creating the condition that I can't be happy until?
Right.
And when you catch yourself there, it's like, oh, wow, that's a rule that I'm creating for myself. That's not true. Like, I can't be happy until. Why not? Why can't I be happy now? And where does happiness even come from? The reason why you get the chandelier and then you're happy for 2 weeks and then you're not is because the chandelier is just glass or whatever it's made out of. It's not happiness. Happiness comes from you. So the truth is, no matter whether it's the car or whether it's the chandelier or it's the relationship or it's the money, it's the whatever, you get it. And then you experience the emotion because you give yourself permission to experience the emotion because that was your condition. Once I get this, then I'll be happy. So then you get it, and then you allow yourself to experience some happiness. But you just as easily could say, I'll be happy now because I choose to be, and then I'll be happy when I get it too. Like, right. Why not do both?
Now, let's pick a famous book, Think and Grow Rich. Is that one you've read recently?
Not recently, but over the years, I've read it at least twice, but it's been a little while.
Same for me. I did pick it up recently. And one of the things that struck me the most from my most recent reading is that I believe there's a list of maybe about 15 things early on that really contribute to happiness. And it's things like being able to contribute to other people, being able to get along with others, having the esteem of people that you respect, all these things. And then wealth was like number 12 on the list. And yet it kind of surprises me in some ways. And I wonder now I know that intuitively when I read the book. Okay. I feel like the book isn't really teaching me anything by giving me that list. I feel I already know this. And yet I do feel there's a certain amount of learning going on here, that even a book that's all about wealth, or ostensibly all about wealth, and they say it right out in one of the first chapters that wealth does not make happiness, and yet we still go after these wealth books. We have I'm sure we have more books on the shelf about wealth in the library, bookstore, however you want to count it, than we do about happiness. And what does that say about us as humans?
That we misunderstand, where our happiness comes from. Right. And there's no, you're not bad or wrong. There's no shame. There's no judgment on that. For everyone listening, I've got all the love and respect in the world for you. I don't even have to know you. And at the same time, just pay attention to, how you're creating your world. And I want to make a side note. You could want to have all the material possessions, all the money, all the stuff, go for it. You can have all the stuff you want. There's a beautiful quote from the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the holy books in India, that says, detachment is not that you own nothing, it's that nothing owns you. Mm-hmm. And so I want everyone to hear that. Maybe I'll say it again, but just be with it. So detachment is not that you own nothing, it's that nothing owns you. Meaning it's not you got to live in some cave somewhere and be a monk and you can't have anything. It's that, do those possessions own you? If you were to lose that car that you worked so hard for, that you thought would make you happy, did you lose like a part of yourself? Are you no longer the cool guy? Are you no longer the I made it, I'm successful because I don't live in that house anymore. I don't have that that ring anymore. I don't have the watch. At that point, the possession owns you. You are now possessed by the possession. And so it's really the attachment that becomes the problem. And so what would happen if you could slow down and recognize that, like you said with your kind of exercise that you do, hey, I bought this thing X amount of months or weeks or years ago, and I thought this would make me really happy. And maybe it did for a period of time, yes, but it's not anymore. So then you might slow down and you might say, what are the things that actually do bring happiness to me and they seem to last? And you'll notice if you use that as a thought exercise with a journaling process, you can just sit on the grass somewhere looking at the sky and you can be blissed out and you can be really feeling happy because you're alive, because you're looking at, you're, excited or enthusiastic about nature. You're just going, wow, how did this all happen? You're looking up at the sky and you're seeing, I remember hearing a Joe Rogan interview where he said, look up, and he goes, there's no roof. And I thought that was a fun little way of putting it. But that whole idea that get clear for yourself, what brings happiness? You mentioned contribution is on that list. And for many people, yeah, that's a big one. Contributing to other people, helping other people. I like to phrase it as give what you most want to receive. And when you do that, you show yourself that you already have it. So you might say, I want more money. Well, why do you want more money? Because I think ultimately it'll make me happy. And what you find that you probably get more happiness by giving the money away than by making it. And the interesting thing, I had a client who hired me years ago, and he hired me because he wanted to be the best in it, to keep some confidentiality. He was in real estate, but I won't say kind of where, but he wanted to be the best in the world at what he did, or at least in the country rather, at what he did. And I dove into that. Why? Why is that important to you? Why does that matter? And what it turned into was, which he wasn't even aware of until we talked about it, if I become this level of successful, then finally my parents, specifically my dad, will tell me that he loves me and tell me that I'm good enough. Now imagine he's putting this condition that I've got to be the best in the country at what I do in order to get my father's approval. Now, is that true? No. That's not true, but that is a story that he'll be buying into, that if he doesn't question and he doesn't talk to his dad, he'll just keep working his ass off for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And maybe he hits it, probably will, given the kind of guy he is, but it's like, maybe he hits it, maybe he doesn't, but he's not doing it because it's what he wants to do necessarily. He's doing it because he thinks he has to, because that love is so important. He doesn't know another way to get it. So it's like, get really clear. What drives you? Why do you do what you do? Are you happy with your life? And again, you want all the material, money, all the stuff, go for it. I help people get that stuff all the time, but I always want to get you first. What is it you're going after at a deeper level, at an emotional level? Because whatever it is you want, you only want that because how you think it'll make you feel. You don't actually want a piece of carbon fiber in your driveway. Like, you want that feeling that you think is associated with it. But feelings are created in this moment right now by you. They're not created by the car. They're not being created by the bank account. Like right now, if I snap my fingers, you and I are in this interview right now, we're both indoors. If I snap my fingers and 10 of your dream cars were in your driveway right now, that wouldn't change anything. You had low energy going into this call. Like that'd be the same.
Right.
Like it doesn't matter that all those cars are there. If anything, now it's more of a headache. It's like, oh, I gotta pay these things. I gotta get the gas on them. I gotta get the tires changed. I gotta do all that, right? And so just getting clear, like one of your titles, like where leaders are forged daily. What does it mean to lead? And it's like, for me, I spend time working with people who identify as leaders, champions, and high performers, and focusing on the leader part. To me, a leader is a person who wants to make a difference and an impact in the world bigger than just them. It's their family, it's their community, it's their company, and depending on the size of the vision, it's their country, it's the world, right? So notice the contribution's kind of baked into the definition, at least my definition of leadership. If you're being that kind of leader, there's going to be a lot of fulfillment. I just had a person tell me that because of the work we're doing together, that his wife said, I'm falling in love with my husband for the first time in like 20 years. And I sat there going, wow, like that feels so good. Yeah, the material stuff we're working on creating, that's going to be cool. But that like relationship benefit, that like happiness benefit, that fulfillment benefit, that wow, like my life has meaning. I'm so excited to wake up in the morning. That to me is infinitely more valuable. And what I found talking to people over the years is it is for them as well. They just haven't really thought about it. They just hope that getting all the stuff will give them that feeling. And usually it's not the case.
So true. And I feel like we all have to have something to aspire to. We got to keep busy. Boredom is possibly one of the more oppressive emotions in life. And for me, that's my answer as to why we should be reading books about happiness, but we read books about success instead. And maybe you have a comment on that, but then I'd like to go a little deeper with some of the quotes of yours.
Yeah, the only comment I'd make with what you just said, it reminds me of this quote I heard I got into personal development when I was 14. And I got into like Tony Robbins when I was around 15. And that really was transformative for me. And it kind of opened up this world to me of coaching and personal development. And he has a quote where he says, success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. You thought that you would be successful once you got to Z, right? Using my alphabet metaphor. And now you're at Z and you're not happy.
Exactly. So it's how you pursue it, right?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
And if you have that grounding, and obviously you're a philosophical guy, I've heard you quoting from the prophet, from various religious books. I think that's really the key to life for me. Is you're going to have to do something with your time. I hope that people are successful. I hope this show helps them be more successful. But more importantly, I hope they're doing it in a way that really enriches their lives, enriches the lives of others.
Oh, yeah. And if I can share one thing before we get into
Please.
The quotes, I often tell people, like anyone who's hearing this, who knows me, and anyone who's ever received a message from me, I always end my messages the same way. And I type it all out and I say, create a meaningful day. All my love, Jamil. Now, sometimes people say, how do I create a meaningful day? And I might even say, create a meaningful life. And they'll say, if I might never see them again. And they say, notice the wording is intentional. First, it's create, not have. Have is passive. Create, you're doing it. And then it turns into create a meaningful day. How do I do that? I create a meaningful day by creating a meaningful moment, a string of those. And if I create a meaningful moment, how do I do that? I make a meaningful decision or a choice in this moment to move me in the direction that I want to be. That's it. If you create a string of meaningful moments, you will have a meaningful day. Your head will hit the pillow at night when you go to sleep and you'll say, wow, like what a day. You do enough of those, you create a meaningful life. But so often we're coming from that space of fear or insecurity or judgment or so many other things where we say, well, I've never told anybody what I really want to do. Like, or I can't do that. People would, what would they think? And, we're living into other people's version of our life and we're not necessarily happy with what we're doing. That doesn't mean stop doing what you're doing. It might mean start shifting how you're doing it, adding some new things into your life, changing why you're doing it, or it might mean changing what you're doing to something completely different. But the point being, at the end of the day, creating that meaningful day starts with creating a meaningful moment, which you can only ever do right now, which is why procrastinating and waiting doesn't make any sense.
Beautiful. And let's move on the success track again for a moment. What would you say is the number one secret to success?
I'm going to make it like a two-part. Know yourself, be yourself. Again, and the beauty of this is where it's interesting. Some people are going to hear that and they're going to say the dreaded words that are the killers of dreams and success. I already know that. So many people just heard what I said and thought, oh, that's cliche. They heard what I just said. Oh yeah, I've heard people say it before. If I said, know yourself and be yourself, and I asked you with 100% integrity and authenticity, can you tell me you're doing that fully to the best of your ability? Almost everyone would say no. And yet, you know it. If you don't live it, it doesn't matter. and that's what it comes down to. It's like, do you know? And it's a work in progress. That's not me trying to like grand stamp it. Or I think that's the word, but it's like, oh, I have most of the time I'm there. Yeah, but there are times where I'm not. And then I remind myself, is this really like the best version of me? Is this how I want to live? Am I being? It's like, oh, and then that's where the work is. That's where the self-development comes in. That's where the introspection comes in, the journaling, the meditation, the whatever. And I'm sitting there going, okay, like, who do I want to be at this point in my life? Maybe 5 years ago, I had a goal and that was my goal for the next 20 years. And maybe that changed. I don't want that anymore. That's okay. Like, you're free to change your mind. It's your life. Do what you want. And so it's like, know yourself and then be yourself. And it's so interesting that for a lot of people, because of those insecurities and those fears and those self-judgments, a lot of people have a hard time being themselves. For me, it took that experience with my dad, which was very like abrupt and jolting, to kind of wake me out of that. But there's an expression I heard years ago, learn from the mistakes of others because you're never going to live long enough to make them all yourself. In that same kind of idea, you don't have to have some traumatic event happen to you. I hope you don't, to have this kind of realization. If you haven't had one of those, take it from my story. Like, learn it now. You're spending time with us. You're listening to this. Don't go about living your life the exact way you were before. Like, get really clear for yourself. Who am I at this stage of my life? What do I want? And then, am I being me, or am I being who I think others expect of me? Am I being who I think I'm supposed to be, right? And then let that go. Like, that is not helping you. That's creating so much of your stress, so much of your misery. Like, your happiness and your peace is so much closer to home and simpler than you're thinking it is.
Great. And then not to respond with a cliche myself, but what you've essentially laid out there is the distinction between simple and easy, right? Mm-hmm. It's simple to say, hey, just know thyself, be yourself, but maybe not easy, right? People see maybe who they are as an obstacle to growth or whatever. But I love how you're seeing it as just being authentic, because if you're going to build the sort of determination required to be successful, it's got to come from some genuine desire deep inside you. It has to be something, I think, very deep-seated, or it's likely to fail.
Yeah, and also to keep in mind, because we've used the word a couple times and we haven't defined it, every single person defines success differently. So there is no, I want to be successful, that's why I'm doing all these things. If you're living up to other people's or society's kind of, you're assumed, or the definition that you understand that society gives at large of what success is, that might not be your definition of success. I remember years ago seeing this little video, short, it's like a Bob Marley interview. And this guy said to him, are you rich? And Bob Marley says, what do you mean by rich? And the guy says, do you have a lot of money? And Bob Marley said, is that what it means to be rich? And he says, like, I don't have those kind of riches, like, but like, I am rich. You know, wealth is the same thing. How do you define wealth? Is so much more than just money. Wealth is a state of being. You know, it's like you can be $2 a day, but you can be wealthy. Like, are you happy? Are you full of like life? Like, inspired means in spirit. Are you in spirit? Like, are you enthusiastic? Right? That the spirit of God within, like that. Are you just radiating where people see you and they just want to be around you? It's like, if you got that, like, yeah, you probably feel pretty wealthy, you know, and maybe you've got a great relationship. Maybe you've got kids. Maybe you've got something you're really proud of. Maybe you have a garden that you've tended to for years and it's grown, and that brings you a lot of joy and you feel extremely wealthy. If you tie success to an amount of stuff, you'll never feel successful, because you can always get more. And, I remember hearing Dr. Wayne Dyer years ago say, where is the peace in more is better? And there is no peace in more is better. And so if you come from that space, more is not better, more is just more. You won't be a better person when you have more money, you'll just have more money. And so when you can recognize that, you can come back home to you first. And when you come back home to you, that's where all these spiritual texts and religions, and that's like the core of all of them. Come back home to you, experience that, like, I'm not particularly a religious person, but this perspective of experience that kingdom of heaven right now in you, in the heart of man. Someone said to the Buddha, how do I attain nirvana? He says, you get there by realizing you are there. It's like, Eckhart Tolle, power of now. It's like, it's all this moment. It's all now. But when you're coming from that space of I'll be happy when, you're never in the present moment. You're always trying to run away from it because you say, I don't like where I'm at now. And so if I don't like where I'm at now, like the future's got to be better. But the thing is, the future doesn't exist. The future is a concept. It only exists in imagination. And the past isn't real either. That's a concept. It only exists in your memory. So what's left? This moment, here now. That's all you will ever have, which is why I said, be it until you see it. Start acting like that version of you in the quote unquote future in your mind now, because there's no other time for you to start acting like that version of you. If you wait until the future, you're still going to keep acting the way you've been acting. So you're not going to create any different result. Think about it like a computer program or something. There's input and there's output. When the input changes, the output has to change. It has to. It can't stay the same. So input being who you're being, the actions that you take. Once you alter that right now, the future is radically different. As long as you say, one day I'll change, your future will be exactly like yesterday.
So true. I'd like to explore what I see as a sort of paradox of self-actualization. Everybody, I think at some point in their life or some part of them feels that they have this amazing opportunity or contribution to make to the world. And I think some people may cover that to a more or lesser extent through life's difficulties. But to get anywhere, you got to be completely determined, right? You need to build this determination. Like, I will do whatever it takes. If you truly want to be successful, if you want to have that, like literally close to 100% chance or likelihood of success, you have to build that determination. But at the same time, if you don't do that through a grounded perspective, then it's so easy to fall into that, hey, I'll be happy when.
Oh yeah. To your point, I had a client, I still work with him, but about a year ago when we began, he's a high performing guy in the real estate space, and he loves a guy named David Goggins, if anyone knows who that is. And he was a Navy SEAL. I think he's considered like the toughest guy in the world. And you sleep when you're dead, go, like push through the pain, like that kind of philosophy. And there's a place for that. Now, he was utilizing that philosophy, but the problem, like you said, when it's not balanced and you're not grounded, you end up using that philosophy and then it backfires and you start using it to beat yourself up because you're using it. And then when you fall short of the ideal, hey, I didn't feel like doing it and I didn't. Oh my God, that means I'm not committed. Oh my God, that means I'm not going to be successful. And whatever the story you start spiraling into, and now you sit there and you say, what's wrong with me? Why can't I keep the commitment? Why can't I do this? And what I told him, and this is what I share with everyone listening, there's nothing wrong with high standards. But if you're going to hold yourself to the highest standard, don't half-ass it. Do it the whole way through. And this is what I mean. If you're going to hold yourself to the high standard of like a David Goggins in terms of your physical performance and your output, also hold yourself to that level of self-compassion, self-forgiveness, and self-love. And so the way I shared it with him was, if you're going to be Goggins on one side, be the Dalai Lama, Jesus, Buddha on the other side. And that's where the paradox comes in. The paradox, and I was telling a different client of mine this last night, the paradox is, on the one hand, I am fully committed. I am all in. I'm doing everything I possibly can to make this happen. And on the other hand, if I fall short, if it doesn't happen, it's completely okay. I'm perfect, whole, and complete as I am. And I'm already successful. And I'll pick myself back up and I'll make a new decision. But I don't use the second one as like an excuse or a reason to not push myself to the fullest on the high standard on the other side. So it's like a paradox of both are true at the same time. If you only have one, either you hold yourself to the high standard, you're going to fall short at some point because no one operates at 100% or everyone's 100% is different every single day. Your best is going to vary day by day, depending on your life situation. And so if you say to yourself, I have to act this way all the time, inevitably you will fall short of that. And if you don't have the balance and the groundedness of the self-compassion, the love, and the forgiveness, now you feel really bad about that and usually burn out along the way. But if you're too much on the other side, now you're just zenned out on the grass, like I said before, looking up at the sky, and you're real happy and blissful, and that could be perfect for you. But from a physical world creation perspective, you're not really doing anything. And you're not really contributing to other people, and you're not really making that much of an impact in the world. And if you don't want to, that's fine. But if you do, then you need the groundedness of both in order to be in it for the long term. Because as yourself, myself, everyone who's listening can, attest to, it can be hard at times. There's moments along the journey where you fall. You have your highs and your lows. You have your moments where you have doubt. You have your moments where you're even thinking about quitting. You're like, is this worth it? Like, why am I doing this? I thought this would be so great. And it's a lot harder than I expected. Or I had this great deal I was going after, and then it fell through at the last minute. I've had, multifamily investor clients of mine tell me they were so excited. They had this like 200 unit deal, and then something happened at the end that was unexpected and it fell through, and they were all pissed off about it. And it's like, there's going to be days like that. But when you can ground, again, yourself in the high standard on both sides, and you're connected to why you're doing it in the first place, the impact you want to have, the big picture of it, there's that expression, sometimes you take 2 steps back so you can have 10 steps forward. And in order to actually pull that off, when you're taking the 2 steps back, you keep your focus on the 10 steps forward. Like, where you're going, this too shall pass kind of thing.
Awesome. Usually I invert things. We talked about the mindset later in the interview, and we talk about real estate investing up front. So for those who have come here for real estate investing, and who I'm sure, and I hope for their sakes, are also interested in mindsets so they can be happy with doing what they're doing. I understand perhaps most of your clients are investors, and many of them multifamily investors. Mm-hmm. So do you have any more? I know you're not an investor right now on the real estate front yourself, but do you have any advice for people sort of in real estate in a more general way about maybe just how to do things better? I'll leave it wide open.
Yeah, for sure. So it's interesting. What I have found is over the years, working with people in the real estate space, they often tell me in a laughing manner, we'll solve a problem that they've been having for a while, or they've achieved a level of success through our work. And they'll say, I don't get it. You don't like really know anything about real estate, and yet you helped me solve this problem, or you helped me with this thing. How did you do that? And it's like, I don't have to know about real estate. I just have to help you get out of your own way. And I have to help you get crystal clear on who you want to be, what needs to be done, and how you're creating, and essentially the stress and the problem and the experience that you're having, unravel it, reconnect you to that true version of you that's authentic, enthusiastic, capable, bold. And then you go and you attack and you accomplish the mission, And so for me, I'd say, I love the expression, the rising tide lifts all boats. And from that perspective, real estate might be what you do. That's one of the boats. Your relationship is a different boat. Your health is a different boat. Very often I've seen people ignore different boats, and they try to put all their eggs in one boat or one basket, metaphorically. And that doesn't work. What that does is that sinks the boat because now the boat gets really heavy. But when you can come from the space of, I am not the boat, I'm the tide. And if I rise the tide, all the boats go up. And so how do I rise the tide? I do the self-work. I do the internal work. Again, going back, most of the people I've worked with in real estate will tell me, they'll give me a testimonial maybe at the end, and they'll say, it was interesting. We didn't really do that much work in real estate, and yet my real estate business took off and all this stuff happened. And it's because, again, real estate is what you do, but it's not who you are. And so focus on who you are, focus on who you're being, focus on how you're showing up in the world. And that starts with the questions. Am I happy? If not, what would need to change for me to be happy? What does success mean to me? Why am I doing all these things that I'm doing? What am I going after? Is there a way I can tie all the work that I'm doing to a higher purpose, a higher mission, a vision, maybe for your business, right? Maybe you want to donate to a certain amount of charities. Maybe you want to have a certain amount of doors under your wings and create communities together, whatever it is you want to do. But I've just found so often we get in our own way with this emotional and energetic baggage from our past that needs to be cleared away. And it only gets cleared away by doing the deep work, by doing the conversations, and by introspecting first and finding out what's driving me. Why do I want what I say that I want? And then am I being, right now you and I could be having this conversation, and for all I know, and I don't mean to say you in general, but just as an example, you could have a spouse at home and maybe you guys aren't doing well. Maybe you're not fulfilled. Maybe there's a lot of issues going on. But here we are talking about, let's say I was a regular real estate guy. Here we are talking about success, and we're talking about strategies, and this is how you're going to get more doors and make more money and do all this stuff. But what if your home life sucks? That's going to impact your real estate side of things, because you're not as enthusiastic, you're not as energetic, you're not feeling as good. But what would happen if you're firing on all cylinders? The relationship side, if it's there, is great. If not, the relationship with yourself is great. Your health is there, and you're just feeling so alive and on purpose. And it's not, when I get there, I'll be happy. You've actually embodied, I'm doing it happily. Now you're showing up to all these deals, and there's this mental framework that I call really just being unstoppable. The two biggest things I see that hold people back are the fear of rejection and the fear of failure. And this might be a little more practical for the people listening. The fear of rejection and the fear of failure are both like the past and the future. They don't exist. They're concepts. Rejection is the story that you make up about what my no means. Rejection isn't a real thing. You asked for something, I said no, and that's what it means. And no might even be an acronym, next one. Like go to the next option.
Right.
But as an example, I've had real estate agents that I've worked with, or brokers or investors, whether it's a deal or they were trying to sell a home or something fell through. They asked for something, the person said no. And then there's a whole story they make up about why that's so horrible, why it's the end of the world, when they can just literally move to the next person. There's somebody who's interested in this, go find them. But you dwelling on the no and making it mean something about you, about why you might not be good enough, about why you won't achieve the level of success you want to achieve, or whatever story you're going to swing, that's just going to slow you down, get in your way, disempower you, and discourage you. And cur, which is the root of courage in Latin, means heart. So when you're discouraged, you're disheartened. And disheartened, you come from that space of what's the point? Now you're more willing to give up. So again, rejection doesn't exist. You can't be rejected unless you reject yourself. And failure is also a concept. There's no failure, there's feedback. You did something, you got a result. You always get a result. Was it the result you wanted? And if the answer is no, how did you create that? What did you do? What did you not do? Who were you being that created that result? And I've, just like what I said before, know yourself, be yourself. I promise every single person, I promise you, if you slow down this episode, if you pause it, if you take notes on it, if you actually ask yourself these questions, your entire life will change. You're getting a multi 6-figure, 7-figure value just from these questions if you actually apply them. Most people read a book and they put it back on the shelf and they don't do anything with it. If you actually take what we're talking about here and apply it to your life, you will not only be better in real estate, you'll be better in your general mindset and your perspective and paradigm about life. You'll be better in your relationship, and your whole life changes. And so I'll pause there, but that's to me the foundation of it. It's get clear on your mind, get clear on the stories you're believing, start questioning the things that are not serving you, and just really get clear on who you are, live that fully, and watch the difference that makes for you.
Amazing. Now I want to make sure that everybody's able to contact you. What is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah. And so there's a few different ways. If they want to just reach out directly, they can either go on my website, which is just jamilsayegh.com. And I believe I gave you all the links, but if not, I'll make sure you have them. But they can go on the website if they want to have a conversation. If something here resonated and they want to see, maybe I can support them with either a vision or a dream they want to build. They want to experience that faster. I think of it as, why wait 10 years when you can do it in 10 months? And so it's that's one option. Or maybe they have a problem, a challenge they want help solving. We can talk about that too. If people enjoy content, they're listening to a podcast right now on the website, they can also find podcasts. They can find my social media. My Instagram is at Dr. Jamil Sayegh, Dr. Jamil Sayegh. And there's probably 500-ish videos and different pieces of content that are all short on purpose. They're about a minute long, because the intention is, I want this to be something you can absorb, act on, and not have to waste a lot of time. I want it to be so practical and useful that there's no real reason not to watch it. And I've had people over the years, I've been blessed to say, it's really turned their day around. It's helped their marriage. It's given them their energy back, different kind of view on life. You can find all that on Facebook as well. Just my name, Jamil Sayegh. And if there's a book that you alluded to earlier that I wrote that people can get it for free. It's called 20 Steps to Your Next Breakthrough. They can get it on the website. And the whole purpose of that book when I wrote it years ago was it's not the end all be all. It's not the one-stop shop, but it's designed to get you from stuck to in momentum. It's designed to get you just off the couch. If you're feeling like you're having a low day, if you're feeling like you need some more energy, it's short, just like the videos. I think it's like 70, 75 pages, I think. And every chapter is like 1 to 3 pages long. Many of them have exercises in them, things that are just very usable here and now. And that's a gift that anyone can get on the website for free. And there's an audiobook version as well for a couple bucks. And so those would be the primary ways to connect.
All right, amazing. So we've run a little long, and I just want to ask you as a send out, can you give us your favorite quote? Could be your own or someone famous, some other famous person.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Let me see. My favorite quote. It's funny, like in this kind of situation, we get actually, yeah, I have my phone right here. I'm gonna pull this up, and this I think this will be a great send out. I share this quote sometimes with clients, and I feel it's got a really wonderful message, and I think it applies beautifully to what we're talking about right now. It's by a guy named William Hutchinson Murray. He says, excuse me, hiccups. He says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there is one elementary truth, the ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. And my interpretation of that to share with people, maybe there's an idea that you got from this podcast. Maybe you want to reach out to me, or maybe you want to reach out to somebody else. Maybe there's an action you want to start taking. Maybe there's something you've been afraid of that you feel like you're going to act on now. Until you actually do it, until you make the commitment. A decision is something you make in your head. A commitment is something that you make with your action. They're not the same thing. And so when you come from that space of, I'm going to get committed through my action, I'm actually going to change as a result of listening to this podcast and choosing to be different. Then, as the quote says, providence moves too. Another way of saying that, then God, the universe, life has a way of just getting things out of your way and helping you get to where you want to be. Might not be the way you thought you'd get there, but it's amazing what happens. I have clients who, once they've actually taken the jump and they make the commitment and we start working together, all the problems they were having start going away. And I needed this solution, and then it just showed up. This person came into my life like 3 days after I said I needed it. And it's like, yeah, because you actually put it out there that you needed it. You actually you spoke it out into existence. And so I'll definitely end it with that quote. What are you committed to being? And then actually do it. And if you do that again, the life changes. And it's a perfect way to finish with the Foundery, right? This is where you're being forged. Like let's go out there and do something.
Exactly, entrepreneurs. So take decisive action. I would love it if everybody who downloaded this podcast would take 1, 2, 3, or 5 ideas from it and truly take that decisive action and take your life to the next level. Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to our audience today.
Thank you so much for having me. God bless everyone.